We were talking about the greatness of Demario Davis in hour number one. Can you calculate how great of a free agent signing he's been up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably make an argument that he's been the best free agent signing of the Sean Payton era. I mean, if he isn't, he's definitely on that short list, especially given the context of how he came in and the struggles they had for years finding a linebacker that was a difference maker on defense. You know, they drafted Stephon Anthony, struck out, and that was really the weak point of those Saints defenses during the 7 and 9 years. And I think bringing him in was a big turning point of taking that group from being mediocre to being really good to this year going into this season. I think they can even take another step towards becoming even better with, the improvement of the secondary, getting the other pieces around. But he's a foundational piece for that team at a spot where they were just really barren for a really long time.
Nick, it seems like the Saints are universally recognized as a roster that is championship ready, and they've been in this window for the last couple of seasons. And knowing the roster like you do, where did you see the biggest form of improvement in signings this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's really two guys, Malcolm Jenkins and Emmanuel Sanders. But I think more so than that, it was really the vision behind bringing in those players. And Malcolm had been here before. He knows the defense. Emmanuel Sanders has a track record, and he showed it last year going to San Francisco midway, picking up their offense and excelling almost immediately. And with the way this offseason is going, it's having smart players that can come in and play, and they can miss OTAs, they can miss minicamp and show up and be good to go. And that's going to be extremely important. And I think that might play out in multiple ways beyond that. You look at the season, and if there aren't crowds in the stadiums, you're going to be able to have teams studying your cadences and your signals and everything you're doing. And you might have to change things on the fly in a way that you haven't previously in other seasons because things are getting drowned out. And Carolina can't sit on the sideline and just pick off everything you're doing and make a list of all your cadences and be ready for game 2. So you might have to change all that stuff up. And, teams don't change a lot of that stuff very often. I mean, just even looking at the Saints 2-minute drill, they signal stuff by hand signals. Now, there's only so many plays that they're out there. So you can maintain that stuff and do something in 2011 and maybe not run the same play or be in the same situation for 2 years and use the same hand signal. And if you go and you watch their 2-minute drills from 2011, you're going to see Drew Brees tapping at his left elbow with 2 fingers. You're going to see it in 2019. They're doing the same thing. So, and the same play follows both times. So there's stuff that they might have to look at. And being a veteran team with smart players, that's going to be really important. So I think it gives the Saints a major advantage. And I think they were aware of that all offseason.
Will Payton put an emphasis on change now that a guy like Joe Brady is in the conference, who's got familiarity with them?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they're going to have to change up a lot of stuff because you got guys like that, and again, they're going to see it. They're going to have to pick. They're going to have guys picking stuff off, and Joe knows everything. He took it. He took it to LSU. He ran it. Those signals aren't going to be able to be the same, and there's going to be a lot of gamemanship there, I think, too, as well, because they're going to know Joe's going to be trying to pick stuff off. Joe might be trying to pick stuff off, and this is something, that happens with players changing teams during the middle of the season. And, they bring someone in, they try to pump the information. And sometimes that can help work really well. Other times you can overthink it and set yourself up and end up going for the cheese and get caught in the trap. But, yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see how they approach that with him in the division now.
Talking to Nick Underhill on Twitter, at Nick_Underhill, NewOrleansFootball.com. If you are a Saints fan, you need to go check out the site and think long and hard about subscribing because it's incredible. I always picture Nick like the scene in A Beautiful Mind where you open the door and he's got yarn all over the place. He's watched like 1,200 hours of film. That's how he knows about Breeze.
Did you see
tapping
Breeze
his
tap his elbow 2 times?
Exactly.
Same place since 2011.
So knowing that about you, Nick, you have gone fully into this kind of Mike Thomas debate, right? The Mike Thomas narrative, which I've been engaged with online, arguing about Thomas over D-Hop. And it's this weird thing where a lot of analytics guys love to try to knock Thomas so much for his success or say, like, it's only slants, it's only short routes, look at depth of target and all these other things. How do you feel about that narrative surrounding Thomas, that it's just slants and short passes that lead to his success?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like an idiotic way to frame a conversation to say, "Hey, take away the best thing somebody does, and what is it?"
I mean,
like,
right? Yeah,
why?
That's very true.
Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand how you even start having that conversation. But go ahead and take away Mike's best thing, which is the slant. He still has the most receptions in the NFL last year, and he still have the most yards in the NFL last year. So, like, it's a weird thing to say, and it's like, hey, if this is all he does, anyways, like, why aren't teams stopping it? Like, I don't get it. But look, you can take away his I think I figured out you could take away his top 4 routes, and he still would have led the Saints in yards and receptions, which kind of shows how good he is right there. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff he doesn't do down the field. And if somebody wants to argue that DeAndre Hopkins is better because he does more down the field, or Julio Jones is whatever, like I'm not going to get too deep into it with someone like that, but I think you can't go wrong with any of the 3 guys. But I think there might also be an element of Mike being held back at least a little bit on some of the vertical stuff by an aging quarterback that, just really doesn't throw the ball down the field like he used to. And, I think when Mike first came in the league, you actually saw a little bit more of that. That San Francisco game, he had the touchdown catch on a deep pass, and there was some other stuff he was doing more down the field. And I just think overall, like, if you watch the evolution of the offense, it's become more and more condensed, and, everything's kind of moving in. And I think they're at a point where they're building a foundation around Breeze to help him, as opposed to Breeze maybe going out and making everybody better. And that's why you see the investment in, Jared Cook and Emmanuel Sanders, where in the past, they really didn't have to spend on wide receivers. So there's just a lot of stuff that I think is an admission of that. If you go back and watch our old games, there's a lot of plays, passing concepts where there was a vertical route where now that's like a deep crossing route about 16 yards down the field instead of, continuing out. So, and just those things have kept pushing in more and more. And I think if Mike played with a different quarterback, there'd be a little more down the field. I don't think he's a deep threat by any means, but I think, that quote unquote depth of target would at least stretch out a little bit more if somebody else was playing quarterback.
Well, I kind of love what Nick points out in one of the articles you wrote about Thomas as well, which is like, I mean, the slant has like an 85% success rate. If anything, they should run it more. like teams aren't stopping it. Just keep hammering it. We're talking to Nick Underhill, NewOrleansFootball.com. Nick created the site. If you love Nick's work, you can go support him there. Nick, there's been a lot of or some rumors surrounding Jadeveon Clowney and the New Orleans Saints. What is your understanding of the situation currently?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked around on that myself. I haven't been able to hear anything independently. Sometimes you just aren't looking in the right places, and maybe people aren't telling you the truth. But, the last I heard, he was looking for around $16 million. So, I mean, if that's the case, I think it would be tough for the Saints to compete if there's other teams looking to spend the money. So far, there aren't. On the other hand, I don't know if you can frame a conversation about the Saints ever through, cap space, because they do their mafia accounting and create money out of nowhere. So, but I do think if it got to a situation where there's nobody out there, the suitors aren't there, and he has to settle and go play somewhere, and you're looking at every situation in the league. If the Saints are there and they want you, I don't see why he wouldn't choose the situation. The fit's obvious. He'd come in, play behind Cam Jordan. I am curious if him and Marcus Davenport were in the same exact situation with the same opportunities, who would end up with more pressures. I think there's a case that it could be Davenport. He was close to Clowney last year, even with missing a little bit of time. But, Cam plays 85, 90% of the snaps every year. I think at his age, if you started pulling back a little bit and you got somebody else in there, that it would benefit him, and his quality per snap would continue to go up. And that's something that you might have to keep looking at is he ages. And then the other part of that, if it was Clowney or Everson Griffin, if one of those guys became cheap, I think bringing one of them in addresses two of your most significant needs on defense with one player, which is, the depth behind Davenport. He's coming back from the Liz Frank injury. He's gotten hurt every year of his career. So I think it's almost, fair or not, I think you have to prepare as if he's basically like a Teron Armstead, and you got to have the built-in backup plan.
Wow.
And then Sheldon Rankins is coming back from his second Achilles surgery, and he has this foot deformity. He had to get out ahead of it and get a surgery before, his other Achilles in the other leg was about to snap. It was preventative. He's supposed to be healthy, but you got to see it at this point. And if he's not good to go, your depth at the defensive tackle is a little bit thin too. So you could bring in Clowney and you'd have, your NASCAR package, and you could kick somebody inside in passing situations, and your depth at defensive end is in good shape. But look, if Davenport gets hurt, that's going to put a lot of stress on the defense. Last year, after that San Francisco game, I mean, that was a bloodbath for the defensive line. Cam got hurt too, but they went from being 7th in the league in pressure per snap to like a bottom 5 team after that moving forward.
And that was when Davenport and who else went down in San Fran last year? Remind me.
Yeah, they lost him. They lost Rankins, and Cam got hurt. So you got to kind of protect against that a little bit. So, having Trey Hendrickson in there playing significant snaps, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not how you want to plan if you can have a different path forward.
NewOrleans.football online is where you can read all of the content and the work. Last one, Nick, we'll get you out of here. A lot of offseason moves around the offensive line. They draft Ruiz. They release Warford. What's your thought of that unit going into the season?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that they're going to be one of the strengths of the team. I think it was an issue last year, and one of the things they've done is they've built the second fastest offensive line in the NFL. If you look at the 40 time per guy, which, T-Bob will probably say it's not the best way to look at it being an offensive lineman, but if you're a zone team and you're running screens, I think that stuff does come into play. And Larry Warford was like the 3rd slowest guard in the NFL, and then he was overweight coming into the season, and there was a source of frustration all year. So getting him out of there, I think is something that's going to help them get a lot better. My biggest question is Ruiz able to play center right away? I know that's where they want him, but figuring out the cadences and getting the snap off at the right time, it isn't just as easy as showing up and doing it. And last year it took Eric McCoy several weeks into camp, and I've been told by some of the guys on the line that there were plays early in camp where, Drew's saying hut and Tron's already 3 yards down the field because the snap was just that far off. So
it's a bad feeling.
I think that's going to I think that's going to be the biggest question. If he can't do that right away, I think you can plug him in at guard and McCoy stays at center. But either way, I think the line's going to be a lot more athletic. The screen pass in 2017, huge weapon for them. 2 years since, it's deteriorated a little bit. Kamara's battled injuries, but his yards per carry have gone down. So I think just solidifying that, making sure it continues to be a strength helps you now in Drew's last season and moving forward. But if Taysom's your quarterback, having a mobile offensive line is going to be something that's going to help you capitalize on his ability so much more.
Consider this segment sold. We'll be in touch about a weekly during the football season. Thank you, sir. Nick Underhill checking in this morning online, NewOrleans.football. Thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.